Every NBA player develops at their own rate, so while some players can step onto an NBA court and dominate from day one as a rookie, others take a few years to fully get acclimated to their surroundings and play up to the hype and potential that was around them when they were drafted. Patience is always necessary for young players in these situations, and over time, they tend to get better and better every year. This brings us to the topic of today's video, where we'll be discussing 6 young NBA players that are finally starting to live up to their potential after previously either experiencing a lot of inconsistencies or struggles that they've begun to move past. Before we start though, it turns out about 67% of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so please, if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but I would also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first player we'll be discussing that is definitely living up to the hype and taking massive strides as an individual this season is Jaylen Brown of the Boston Celtics. It's crazy to think that when Brown was selected 3rd overall back in the 2016 draft, the narrative around the pick was that it was a reach, because now looking back, he's easily one of the best players from that draft class. Jaylen Brown's career has seen him show solid growth from year 1 to year 2, then slight regression in year 3, then last year in his 4th year, he took himself to the cusp of stardom, and now this year, he legitimately looks like a star two-way player blossoming in front of our very eyes. The talent has shown through countless times in the past that he has, but the consistency in which he would demonstrate it was always something that left more to be desired, as he wouldn't really impose himself on games as much as he could have. This year though, he's currently averaging 26 points per game, he's shooting incredibly efficiently, making 52% of his shots and 42% of his threes, and his perimeter defense has been stellar. He and Jason Tatum have formed one of the most dynamic 1-2 punches in the league, and they'll only continue to get better and better from this point moving forward. The next player that looks to finally be living up to the hype that we'll be discussing is Lauri Markkanen of the Chicago Bulls. Markkanen was a very pleasant surprise early in his career when he showed off his ability to knock down shots from the perimeter and score in a plethora of ways as a 7-footer, and from his first year to his 2nd year, he had people thinking he was going to be a true pillar of the franchise for the Bulls, but last season in his 3rd year, he strangely regressed a ton. His shot just wasn't falling, and his confidence was pretty low, and that halted the hype that was building around him. But now under new coach Billy Donovan, he's back to looking more confident out there after repeatedly butting heads with former coach Jim Boylen. This season, Markkanen is averaging a career-high 19 points, a career-high in field goal percentage at 51%, and a career-high from 3 at 40%. It's a shame that he's just suffered an injury that will hold him out for a few weeks, but it shouldn't hold him out for too long, and once he gets back onto the court, he should continue to build upon the breakout year that he was having and get fully back on track being a versatile scoring big man. The next player we'll be discussing that has finally started to play at a level worthy of prior hype is Malik Monk of the Charlotte Hornets. Monk has had a rough start to his career before this season, and a lot has contributed to it. When he was drafted back in 2017, he was labeled by many as the best shooter in the draft, but in each of his first 3 seasons in the NBA, his 3-point shooting got worse and worse, and he never once even shot above league average from 3 in that span. Then last season he got suspended for the rest of the year in February for failing a drug test, and at that point his career was very much on the ropes. This is the final year of his rookie contract, and it was definitely now or never for him, so it's genuinely great to see him play as well as he has recently and finally start to look like the shooter he was drafted to be. He started the season mostly out of the rotation because of everything I mentioned before, but behind the scenes he's worked incredibly hard to prove to his coach that he deserves minutes, and when the playing time finally did come, he made the most of it. He's only averaging about 10 points per game, but he's shooting 46% from the field and 48% from 3, both of which are career highs, and his confidence is higher than it's ever been. The next player we'll be discussing that has finally started living up to the hype is Josh Jackson of the Detroit Pistons. Jackson, like Monk, had a very bumpy start to his NBA career, and the reasoning also featured both struggles and inconsistencies on the court, along with some issues off the court. His time spent in Phoenix did see some promising moments, and he wasn't necessarily a bad player, but he was declining instead of improving. Then last year in Memphis, he basically had to start from scratch when they assigned him to the G League for most of the year to try to get him more playing time and reps to see if he could get things going. Near the end of last season, he did manage to work his way back into the Grizzlies' rotation, and that positive momentum has carried over into this year with the Pistons, because as the team's sixth man, he's making a consistent impact on both offense and defense, and he's also scored over 20 points in 2 of his last 3 games. His issues have always boiled down to inefficient play, lackadaisical effort, and questionable decision-making, and he's shown improvement in all of those areas. He still has a ways to go for sure, but it no longer looks like he's heading down the path of being a total bust, like he perhaps once did not too long ago. The next player starting to play up to the hype this season is Mikal Bridges of the Phoenix Suns. The Suns made headlines this offseason when they signed Chris Paul, and after the team's 12-0 run in the bubble last year, combined with this acquisition, the Suns were expected to break out this year. So far, they've been as good as advertised, and yes, Chris Paul deserves a lot of the credit, but Bridges is actually at the heart of a lot of the team's success, and it doesn't get talked about nearly as much. Bridges was drafted as the top 3-and-D player in the class of 2018, and in his first 2 seasons, he was a good rotational player who played some solid defense on the perimeter and didn't try to do too much on offense. This year, though, he's taken full control of the team's starting small forward spot after previously being in and out of the starting lineup. He's been a dominant defensive player for the team, his offensive game has grown so much, and he does all of the little things that playoff contenders need. He's putting up a career-high 14 points and 6 rebounds per game while shooting 48% from the field and 38% from 3, and his defense and floor spacing make life much simpler for guys like Devin Booker and Chris Paul around him. And finally, the last player we'll be discussing today that is taking massive strides after a promising yet inconsistent start to his career is Malik Beasley of the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Wolves' season as a whole has been pretty disappointing, but Beasley has been one of the few truly bright spots. Beasley spent his first 3.5 years of his career coming off the bench for the Denver Nuggets, and last year he was losing minutes, so they traded him to Minnesota, and ever since his arrival in Minnesota, he's been playing like a completely different player. In a small sample size last year, we saw him put up over 20 points per game while playing smart, efficient basketball, and we were left wondering if he could continue that level of production moving forward, and right now, it looks like the answer to that question is yes. This year, he's once again shooting the ball incredibly well, he's scoring over 20 points per game, and he's been a reliable go-to guy in the absence of Karl Anthony Towns. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about the players we discussed today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.